I want to show you some of the research on why you need to go camping for your mental health. Hey everybody, Chad Cruiser here with Health and Homestead. At Health and Homestead, we talk about homesteading, living in the country, living the simple life, and scientific studies that are beneficial to your physical and mental health. Now, the benefits that you find from camping are not only things like, obviously we all know, fresh air, getting out in the sunshine, getting in touch with the soil. In the soil, there's actually good bacteria which may be beneficial for things like your mental health, also even cancer. So that's something, but that's not actually what I want to talk about. I want to talk about two different things that camping can do specifically in the areas of mental health. I saw a t-shirt just today that said, camping, spending tons of money to live like a homeless person. And you know, there's some truth to that. Obviously, it does cost some money typically to buy a tent. You can buy cheaper ones. I know I bought the cheapest ones out there, and they don't really keep the elements out. They help you to sleep a little bit, but once the rain comes, it's like living in a bathtub, obviously. But it is true, it does cost a bit of money. There are some things, unless you go super simple. If you just go out and sleep under the stars, it really costs you nothing. But there are some negative sides to camping. Obviously, it costs money often. You got to go pay for a camping spot in many places. Some places are actually free. But when looking at the benefits, the first thing that comes to my mind is something that the researchers call RNT, repetitive negative thoughts. That there's something about camping that may actually be able to reverse that, according to the research. So here's research on timing and duration of sleep on mental health. And this is research in the journal Cognitive Therapy and Research. Now they reveal that sleep time and actually duration of sleep affect RNT, or repetitive negative thoughts. It turns out that shorter sleep duration is correlated with more negative thoughts and obsessive compulsive symptoms. So it could be that one of the factors in OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder, someone who goes over and over thinking the same things or maybe doing the same thing over and over, one of the factors, not the only factor by any stretch necessarily, but having a lack of sleep can actually make people more prone to these repetitive negative thoughts or OCD type symptoms. So if that's something you struggle with, you want to consider getting better sleep, but not only getting an adequate amount of hours of sleep, but another factor is actually when you go to bed. You see, you could get your 8 hours in from 2 in the morning, and 8 hours later you wake up, but that may not have the same benefit as if you were going to bed closer to between 9 and 10 o'clock. Notice what the research shows. They also discovered that those who went to bed late were more likely to have RNT, or repetitive negative thinking. So it's not just about, getting enough hours of sleep. It actually may be those who go to bed later may have the same negative characteristics, these repetitive negative thoughts, which, by the way, obviously that's kind of a classic symptom of depression in general, that when you're going over and over and over the same negative thoughts, we might call this now RNT, repetitive negative thoughts. And so we recognize that one of the potential causative factors is not only not getting enough sleep, but even going to bed late. So getting to bed closer to the 9 o'clock hour, and then maybe stay sleeping for between 8 to 9 hours. In the beginning, it's going to be very difficult. If you're used to going to bed at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and you say, well, I'm just a night owl. I used to think of myself the same way until I changed my lifestyle. And once my wife and I started going to bed somewhere between 9 and 10 o'clock, man, I started feeling so much better. Even though I would get the same amount of hours each night, man, just physically overall, I remember I'd always yawn all the time. It was just part of life. And if you're yawning during the day, something is not right. You actually should, during the day, feel pretty rested and rejuvenated throughout the day. Now, you're thinking, Chad, what on earth does this have to do with camping? Well, I thought you'd never ask. Let's find out. Here's research on how camping can help your sleep. Back in 2013, a study was done where people went into nature during the summer to camp for a week. They went without cell phones. within 1 week, their circadian rhythm had shifted so that they would sleep 2 hours earlier than living in artificial light. It turned out that they also woke up earlier. Interesting that their circadian rhythm began to just function the way maybe humanity's circadian rhythm almost always has functioned, and that was historically that when you're by a fire, it's not like being inside your house when you have the lights on and it's just like a blazing glory inside of your house after the sun goes down. No, I mean, a fire is a relatively dim light, at least a standard, wood-burning fire. Yes, it creates light, but that red light doesn't have that negative impact that the blue light that will come out of our standard light bulbs that we would have in our house. And so the fire actually helps you to transition to your sleeping hours. I'm actually going to do a video on that in the future. It's very powerful research on that also. But realizing that turning on those lights in the house, it makes us shift our circadian rhythm so we end up going to bed later, or if we're on a screen that's emitting the blue light and so forth. But camping, even if you have a fire out there, it'll still help you to fall asleep earlier and begin to shift your circadian rhythm to the early hours that research is now showing us will enhance our mental health. But what happens if you go camping in the winter? Now, this is a study in the summer. What happens in the winter? They did another study where they sent people out camping in the winter for 1 weekend. So not a whole week like the other study. Within the weekend, they ended up going to bed over 2.5 hours earlier. Did they get up earlier? Well, no. They didn't end up getting up earlier. So the studies on camping show that shorter camping trips with exposure to sunlight can help reset the circadian rhythm. Going camping can help you go to bed earlier, get you on a better sleep cycle. And notice how they didn't get up earlier in the winter. I think humans, especially if you live further north in the northern hemisphere, obviously you get less sunlight than you would normally. So in the summer, like where I live, it doesn't get dark until about 10 o'clock at night. And then, it's getting light somewhere in the 5 o'clock hour. And in the winter, it's getting dark around 5 o'clock and it's light around 8 o'clock. So there's significantly less sunlight in the winter months. And the people who went camping in the winter, they didn't end up getting up earlier. So I really think humans were meant to sleep a bit more in the winter months. You just feel like sleeping more then. And in the summer, you just kind of feel less like doing that if you're up in these northern regions. But this is one. So one benefit, one potential cognitive or psychological benefit to going camping is that it can help readjust your circadian rhythm so that you're sleeping at a healthier time that is just simply better for your mental health. But there's another thing that camping can help you to do, and that has to do with something called the subgenual prefrontal cortex. The subgenual prefrontal cortex is part of the brain that is operative during repetitive negative thinking or negative thoughts. And what about camping, or what about being out in nature at least, can help us with this issue? Here's research on nature versus urban walking and its effects on rumination. It has been shown that rumination is a risk factor for mental illness. A study was reported in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in the United States of America, and they had healthy individuals walk for 90 minutes in either an urban setting or a natural environment. Well, the results? Those who walked for 90 minutes in the natural setting had a decrease of activity in the subgenual prefrontal cortex and lower levels of rumination. The same benefit was not seen in those who had an urban walk. So think about that. So you really have these two amazing benefits that both have to do with these repetitive negative thoughts. One of them is getting out and going camping and shifting your circadian rhythm. The second one has to do with simply going for a walk in nature. Now you might be thinking, so Chad, you don't really have to go camping to do the latter one. True. You don't really have to do camping at all to even do the first one. You could just go to bed earlier, right? But camping just helps do it for you so that you don't even have to try. And secondarily, when you're out camping, you just want to go for a walk. You're already out in nature, you're already out in the quiet and the peaceful environment there, and That's just one of the things people typically do when they're out camping is they go for a walk, they go out in the mountains, they go on the hills, they go down the path, they go by the river, whatever it is. But doing these things, being out in nature, and by the way, if you don't have time to go camping or it's not the right time of year, you can still go walking in nature. Go for a 90-minute walk in nature. And doing that will take that part of the brain, the subgenual prefrontal cortex, and it will help it to settle down, calm down, and therefore you begin to calm down and just feel better so that you have less of those negative, repetitive thoughts. So I want to challenge you, either go out into nature, go for a walk, go for a hike somewhere. Even if you live in the city, you can go take off and drive out of the city and find a path somewhere outside of the city. And secondarily, I would challenge you, take some time, either alone camping or with your family, with some friends. Get out in nature, go camping, sit by the fire, let your circadian rhythm get back to the way it was designed to be, and find the benefits that God has given us in nature. Now, if you like this video, hit the subscribe button. God bless, and I guess have a good night.